now then. So just before I get started, I want to say a massive thank you for helping me get to 1,000 subscribers. Kind of insane. I'm ridiculously happy. Um, and as I promised, we're going to be doing plenty of stuff. So on the video tomorrow or day after, depends on when the new season drops and things like that. Um, I'm going to have that as like the video for the giveaways and stuff. So all the information will be in that video. So look out for that, and you can win yourself something. I'm currently in the process of ordering a few things so I can do some art streams. Because that's what I haven't spoke about much, but I like doing a lot of art, so I wouldn't mind streaming sometimes. So I'm doing a bit of art, do some Gwent related stuff, all that kind of stuff. And I'm gonna look to set up a Discord as well, so we can all mess about in that, and you can have a bit of a chat with each other and have a chat with me and that sort of thing. So, a few cards to cover, but I'm just going to do a tier list of the new cards that we've all got seen for the new expansion. At the time of recording this, there's 2 Syndicate cards to come, an Epic and a Rare, and a neutral card. Don't really know what that is yet. So it's pretty much all the cards here. And yeah, I think there's some interesting ones. I think there's some that are kind of mid. I do also have like up on my other screen the card text just in case I forget any. So if you see me glancing off, that's what I'm doing. So we'll get started. So to say, I feel like this is just like feels like a win more card. It feels like a win more card, and it's very expensive for what it's doing. Like resetting the order is obviously very good, and you would think with Varaxis being as good as he is, she'd be very good as well. But I think a lot of the reason why Varaxis is very good is that it can reset some really big gold orders, so things like Baron and Jewels. So I'm thinking it's like a C, mainly because it also has to be all the mages that use their abilities. Let me just double check the wording. Use their orders this turn. Yeah, so it has to be on this turn it happened. It isn't reset at any point. And so for that reason, I think it's a bit of a pain to set up. So for Letitia, and again, what I'm going to double check, patience of all allies is increased by 1 and it rolls up. I don't think it's actually that bad. I'm actually going to say it's an 8, mainly because it's 7 provisions, and it's sort of this kind of card that's going to tick up and tick up and tick up. And it's very similar to the gripes I have about Full Test, where if it sticks for 1 turn, you get a bit of value, maybe a bit undervalued, but it's okay. And if it sticks for a long time, it's kind of a win more, because it's one of these things that's just going to snowball out of control. So if this sticks for, pardon, if this ticks for like 3 turns, for example, your patience cards are kind of going out of control. You're probably not going to use this with like Gerhardt. Can't see you realistically getting both of those to stick, but certainly with the 2 students, you can get this ticking kind of out of control very quickly. So yeah, I think it's quite good. But obviously I wouldn't use it in anything but like a mage heavy deck. And I think one of the selling points is like you don't really need tons of cards to be benefiting from this for it to be good. Like just ticking on 1 student, for example, is kind of good enough. So practice makes perfect. I honestly aren't a huge fan of. I'm going to chuck it down at D just because it's basically kind of operates like decoy. D is maybe a little harsh. It's kind of maybe between these two, I think, but yeah, I'm not a huge fan. Not a huge fan. Sort of reason for this is like it feels a little slow for what it's doing. Yeah, I'm not a massive fan. Not a massive fan. So now for R2's a student, I think that's an A. Um, mainly because we have like information about this from Banard student. We saw Banard student is pretty good, and Aretusa student is functionally the same card points wise. Um, and so for like that reason alone, because it's a target for Shani, uh, something like a casting contest onto it is really good. It's going to hold through to later rounds because the problem you sort of face with Banard students and Shani is if both your Banard students are answered pretty early, which is kind of doable since the 4 points, then Shani feels kind of sad. But now you can run 4 cards where your opponent basically has to answer these very early, or you have good Shani targets. So in effect, this operates like a buff to Shani. So yeah, I kind of really like this card. It's like bordering on. No, it's not bordering on S actually. I think it's very good though. Very very good. So we'll flick over to the next one, and it's Artaud, and this is a card I had a gripe with in that the wording's like super ambiguous. Um, Mainly because it's not totally clear how it works. Like my assumption would be it works like create, where you're going to see 3 cards that you're given spine to, but it could just as easily give you an entire list of cards. Um, Less likely it could be random, but let's say it's create. For the sake of this, I'm saying this is for create. I honestly think this is pretty good. Like bordering on S, good. And so the reason for this is like giving spine to something, you can just run like a Fergus. Fergus has been run in like ball style decks for quite a while, on and off. Or you just run, a couple of things that give spine, whatever. And you can use this very targeted. So just kind of pick and choose. Nature of card games is people are going to play good cards, and your opponent's going to play stuff that eventually one of them is going to look a little tempting. So this is basically a 4 with assimilate that lets you play what's it called? A good card at your opponent, and because it has assimilate and it's a spawn and play, it basically works like Brathan's, where it triggers its own assimilate on deploy. So it's always come down as a 5, and nearly always going to have good targets. As I said, during the game you could just go into like a round 3 and your opponent plays, I don't know, they play a Koshi, for example, and you're like, okay, want one of those. You Fergus, pick on it, give it spying, and then you just Artaud, sorry, puts himself to 5, plays a Koshi, you're very happy. So I think it's hard for this card not to be good, basically. So on the flip side, we have Master of Puppets, which I don't think is very good. Do not think it's very good. Uh, Mainly because you have to steal something absolutely insane for this to be any good. Because it's a 4 who the next turn lets you kind of swap its place with a card of your opponents, and that means they're getting 4 points in the exchange. So like at 5 provisions, you probably want to be getting 8 points for this. So you basically have to steal like a 12 and time it right so your opponent can't just reuse the order and swap it straight back. It's too conditional for me. I really don't rate this at all. And then Faircat, who I've completely forgotten what it does. Play a special from your hand, then draw a card. Whenever you play a special, give spying to a random non-spying enemy unit. It's kind of mid. It's kind of mid. I think it's like a C, mainly because of the drawing card and the thinning. So it kind of works like a tutor, but you have a smaller pool of cards to access to. You have to have a special in your hand. The spying giving is kind of nice with Artaud, but apart from Artaud and Coup, you don't really care about stuff getting spying, and because it's random, you can't guarantee this is going to hit something nice. So maybe it boosts an aristocrat or like a thirsty dame by 1 on deploy, and yeah, it's okay. Basically, it's okay. I think you could play it, but it's not exactly, breaking the meta apart by any means. Then we got Thanedd Turncut, which was revealed a long time ago, so I'm going to have to reread. Give an enemy unit spying, order and conspiracy, damage an enemy unit by 1. Whenever an enemy unit gets spying, reduce this unit's cooldown by 1. Cooldown 2. There's a lot of words for it basically being God, I forgot his name because I haven't even played it. The Bad Van Molehem, that's like 5 power, damage an enemy unit by 1, damage it by 2 if it has spying. I honestly don't rate this too much. Just because it doesn't really synergize with what you're trying to do as Nilfgaard. It plays very similar to like Elven Swordmaster, for example, but is more conditional, and you're less likely to get the reduced cooldown with it. So I think there's just like better fours. Like Nilfgaard already has pretty good 4 provision cards. I don't know what you'd be replacing to run this, because you've got like your Fangs, you run your Emissary for your Brathens, you put in your Sergeants, and then does this card warrant putting any of those? I don't think it does. Now we've got the cool ST ones, which I think people are sleeping on. So Simless. Simless is good. I don't know A good. I think maybe B. I'm really tempted to say it's like A, but I think maybe B. Just because like the thinning potential of this, now like Spellertail kind of decks have a lot of synergy with this procs from special cards. So let's say you just use 2 natural selections from your deck. He's playing as a 12 with 10 reach for removal, and any card on the board that's getting procs off spells, so whether that be the again, don't know, I've forgotten the names, the Veiled Threes that spawn a copy of themselves. Get double trigger on that. You could literally just play 2 Adrenaline Rushes in your deck, and this comes down as an 18 on deploy. With the new card, Seer, where if you target it, you spawn another one. You can basically do like say Tempering, and then it comes down as a 17, and it's more spells for like gods and things like that. So I think there's a hell of a lot of synergy there, and there's very few like bad outcomes, and it doesn't really require you to alter just a standard symbiosis Spellertail kind of list to run this. You don't really need to include specific things for this to just fit straight in. So I think it's pretty good. I think it's one where I want to try it a bit and then figure out if it's good. So for Salve Andimeda? Let's just say Salve. I think this is pretty good. If you compare this to something like a Flying Redanian, we see that Flying Redanian is basically an auto-include Syndicate, and this plays very similarly, but the difference is you need to draw into it and boost by 6. So it's kind of like more points if you get it in a round 1. More points than a Flying Redanian would be, but if you brick on it, it's kind of sad. So I think for that reason, it's another B, where like I think it's good. It's good, but it's draw dependent, very draw dependent. However, you never know. It depends how consistent we can make drawing into this, basically, or tutoring, because it isn't a nature spell, so it's not like Verve can just pull it straight away. So yeah, I think it's a B. I think it goes in Spellertail, but I don't think it's like going to change the deck all that much, where like you're gonna see it's not adding another 3% onto the win rate. Not that kind of card. So Orb of Insight is another one which I've seen people said is not that good, and I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong. I think this is an A. And so the reason for this is it deploys as a 4, and when it's in your graveyard and you play specials, then it'll kind of play itself, and Honestly, it's already kind of good. Like an 8 for 6, because let's face it, Spellitel is going to use 3 specials. So you're always going to get that second trigger off on it. So it's an 8 for 6, which also procs with your specials. And as I was sort of saying about the other cards that benefit really nicely from specials, good, really good. Because there's already that synergy in place, it just kind of fits straight in. Like this is like arguably, I would probably be happy to maybe trim away a gold to bump up some like 5 provision cards up for this. Like is that how good I rate it? Now Elvencia is another one, like A, like maybe FS. I think honestly it's first S. Um, and this is sort of because what we've seen with Elven Sorceress, where the value of having a 4 provision card, a 5 provision card at 4 power that basically says respond to me or I'm going to get massive value. It's pretty insane because as many times as it just gets answered, there's just as many times where this pops off and gets you absolutely huge value. Um, and if you consider with Orb, for example, if this sticks and then you play Orb next turn, then you get 2 triggers of Orb, and so both are going to go to graveyard. So then eventually when you use up the counters and pull it back out again, you get 2 more uses of it. Really good. Really, really good. And then of course this means this is 4 spells. Basically with the combination of these 2 cards, plays as 4 specials from 2 cards. And you know our boy God loves that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's an S. Really, really like it. So Melusine. Skellige has like won this expansion from card art alone because the card art's absolutely beautiful for it all. Um, and honestly, I think this card's like B or C. Um, I think a C, just because it feels very similar to Francesca in that if this sticks, it can get you massive value, but it's a big investment to play it. And if it gets answered, you're kind of sad, mainly because the order isn't Zeal. But I think there's a lot of synergy, and actually, I'm going to be biased because it's the Hermit that I revealed, but I think the synergy with like this card is really, really nice. And a lot of the thing that's being overlooked here is because Melusine is damaging the units on the side, you can put a Hermit next to it, and Melusine will boost itself by 1, Hermit gets damaged, next turn Hermit damages Melusine, and because it's Melusine's like base power, it's now Melusine's damaged, and therefore if you're playing, for example, Battle Trance, there's room for healing in there for it, and it basically there's a lot of nice synergy between these 2 cards. And so again, I'm putting Hermit at B, and I may be biased as I say, but I think it's a solid card. Again, not meta breaking, but you can still run Portal in a Druid deck. It's basically like a Svalbard Priest with a ceiling, but 1 provision less. Pretty good. I honestly like it. As I say, it feels like a B kind of card. It's not like game breaking, but I think it's a solid inclusion. Now, offering to the C is like. I mean, I honestly like it. I think it's like a B, mainly because it's damage all units and spawn a Siren on the road boosted by a number of allied targets. So basically, you're not really losing anything from it. It'll leave all your units damaged, and so there's absolutely huge synergy here with Bear Witcher, Bear Witcher Mentors, because if you can get everything damaged, that's kind of nice because Skellige typically is looking to get up to base power. It doesn't boost that many things, so you basically end up with damaging everything on your side. Everything on your side is basically set to like 1 below its base power, and then you get a Siren spawned, and then you can play like a Mentor with 5, 6, 7 damage stuff, plus all the damage stuff on your opponent's side can be pretty tall. And of course, we got our boy Dagger as well. This is obviously very nice with Dagger. I think that's pretty much something I'm going to be trying day one, is like a Dagger Druid kind of combination, because I think there's potential there. We saved this for last because this card's kind of nuts. It's a Singer, which what it does, don't want to get this wrong, is on deploy it heals a unit by 2. First time you heal an allied unit during your turn, spawn a Deafening Siren on this row, and Deafening Sirens are 2-point beasts. This is absolutely insane because this is like an 8 on deploy and also a 2.10 engine. So Lieutenant von Hurst, for example, for Syndicate, is like a solid card at 8 provisions, which is 2 points, basically spawning like 2 points on a row. And this is 3 provisions cheaper and has a nice deploy effect. And so like even if it's answered first turn, you still basically get like 4 points of value left over after the card's gone. Von Hurst only gives you 2 points left over, just for like a comparison of the kind of value you're getting. I think this is absolutely nuts of a card. Like an 8 on deploy, 2 points to 10 engine is insane, provided you can synergize it nicely. And I think there's enough on offer here. So, for example, you put like a Hermit, just a Hermit on the board, like these two together, is enough to turn this into an insane engine. So yeah, I honestly think this is really, really good. Now we've got the monster cards, and so many words on this. I'll double check we got this right. So Bloody Mistress, aka Garnicora, probably the card I was most excited to see. Which is, right, I'll talk through this again. Sabbath, at the end of your turn, spawns 2 fruits like I've said, and then turns into Garnicora. Garnicora at the end of the turn turns itself into Bloody Mistress, but if you have Sabbath, it boosts self by 1 for each allied fruit instead. So a lot going on here, but basically this comes down as a 9 with like 2 Thrive units, and provided you can keep Sabbath up, it's 2 points to turn engine. If you're running Garnicora's running like the Gurney leader, Fruits of Isgith, then it's like a 3 points to turn engine. Good, very good. Like an A. I'm hesitant to call it an S, but I think there's no real downside to this. Like, it's a 7, so it's going to trigger Thrives. I think you could literally just throw this into the Koshu Relic list that's been floating about and not even play Fruits of Isgith, and you're kind of happy. Because it basically plays as like spawns Neckers, and you get to double dip because the fruits are going to boost themselves, and the fruits become more resilient over time, which makes Gurney a more resilient engine. So it's kind of insane. Not to mention, if you play this like when you're just on Sabbath, and you flip it to Gurney, and you spawn your 2 fruits, then you could consume a unit off the row, it'll turn back into Bloody Mistress, get Sabbath again, spawn 2 more fruits. I think that's probably not the most amazing idea, but it's something that's at least worth exploring, basically. So Mamuna is pretty good. I think it's like a B, honestly. Similar to what I was saying about Simless, I think there's a lot of synergy here without the need to build the deck from scratch, basically. Because this is basically operating like a ghoul that also spawns the unit it eats. So we've seen ghouls at like 5 provisions are kind of whatever, but the ability to play it is actually quite important because there's a lot of good targets for this. You would probably only run this in like a relic deck, so Gankians are obviously very good. This is going to play as a 20 on deploy, provided you have Sabbath, which, as we've kind of seen, Sabbath isn't the hardest thing in the world to set up against everything but the most control heavy decks. So I think it's a solid inclusion. again, same thing I've been saying. It's not a meta defining card, but it's very solid, very very solid. Now the beautiful Self Eater. I need to talk about the art for a sec. I absolutely love the art on this. It's so good, and the card itself is good as well. Honestly, I think it's an A. So the reason for this is like I've tried to compare it to Endrega Lava in that this basically plays like a 3 power on deploy Endrega Lava that has like a conditional thrive. But now that we have like a lot of relics in the game, like you can quite reliably just play like a relics deck now. So I think for that reason it works, and if this kind of sticks, then you can improve the value of it as an engine, by spawning another one. So when you use the order, it splits down into 2/3s. You play a relic that turn, for example, you go up to 4s, you split the 4 into a 2, and then you play another card, and then it goes into a 5, a 3, and a 3. So in 2 turns, it's already played for 11 points value. And if you got say 2 Endrega Lavas up to 6s, for example, you feel like they did pretty well. This card can do that in 2 turns, basically. So it's kind of good. I really like it. Now, Effigy. Effigy is a card that, like, on first seeing, I thought was kind of really good, but I'm not as sold on now. So the reason for this is it obviously has the value that like Squirrel brings, but the value of Squirrel is it's like an unconditional. You just get rid of something that your opponent wants in the graveyard because it can target like specials. It's particularly good because of the echo cards, being able to target like a Coup and an Era and Amphibious Assault. All this kind of stuff is really good. Obviously Madoc as well, because you can just play it on a dry pass and just get rid of a Madoc, for example, and that kind of justifies it at 4. Problem with this is it can only target units, so like Madoc's still on the table, that's fine, but all of the like good echo cards are completely off the table. So like AA can't be targeted, there's no way to get it to work. And even then, the only way to target a Madoc is if you have Gurney or Bloody Mistress out. And typically the value from Squirrel of banishing Madoc is like either round 1 if your opponent kind of messes up and leaves it in the graveyard and you were able to target it, or in like a round 2 kind of dry pass would be like the 2 key times to play it. Whereas the only way to use this to banish a Madoc would be if you play a Gurney in like round 1. I don't think you want to do that, and you can't really use it on a dry pass because it boosts a unit, so you need a unit down, so it can't be used as a dry pass card. The one thing going for it is that it's an organic, so it can at least be tutored, but yeah, a little disappointing. Not to mention if you compare it to like a Pact or something, or like Swallow, now that that's 6. Boost by 6 for 4 provisions. You need to be hitting something pretty big to be kind of happy with your target. Because typically there's not that many bronzes being in the graveyard that you really care about. Maybe Crow Messengers, but I mean, beyond that, like nothing's really coming to mind. Like maybe in like a Monster's Mirror, getting like a Gankian's very good, obviously, which is probably a matchup where this is going to see a lot of value, is eating something like a Gankian in your opponent's graveyard. But yeah, beyond that, not too impressed. So the Scoundrel, and I have zero clue where to put this. Absolutely zero clue, because it's so meta dependent. It depends how good your targets are, basically. Because if you're getting something like, if Nilfgaard is running tortoises, for example, then this card is insane. Being able to pull out a tortoise and comes out as like a 9, 9 points of damage to kill it, but then you'll get boosted by 3 and you're getting 7 coins on killing it and all that kind of stuff. Means it's a really good target if there's really key bronzes, so like things like a Seer, for example, or a Hammer Dryad. Very nice. but there's just as many matchups where you just don't care about what's been pulled. It can interrupt with like thinning cards, but do you really care about messing with thinning? Because you're doing this in round 3. If your opponent hasn't thinned, by that point they don't really care about the thinning. So I think this is like a B. I would say B. I think it's very playable card, but how good it is incredibly meta dependent. And so you'll probably see that this is like very good for a week and then useless the week after, that kind of card. No, Scapegoat, honestly, I think is our first F, because it's just bad. It's just really bad. It's like a conditional 7, but the way that bounties work is you usually want to kill the bounty card the turn you've given it bounty, just because if you don't, it gives your opponent a chance to purify it, to boost it up so it's harder to kill it to get the payoff from bounty, all those kinds of things. So this is usually coming down as a 4 for 4. And then, if you damage the units, then it goes up to a 7. But, you already have amazing 4s for Syndicate. Like, are you going to cut, say if you're playing Diversion, like, are you going to cut Mutants Makers? Are you going to cut Fangs and Fizztex? Short answer is no. Like, Passiflora Peaches, Tax Collector, none of these cards are worse than this. And so, why would you cut any of them to run this instead? It's basically my logic on it. Like, I'd rather have a Vigilante than this, basically. Vigilantes are kind of disappointing. So, I think that's it, how good it is. So, you have to get the pronunciation right, this. Twinviandra. So, this is one of the first few cards revealed, and if you remember what it does, you can play it on melee to set an allied scenario to the final chapter, and on ranged, it can refresh the order of an allied location. So, resetting a location, it's not that good. It's not really that good. Being able to do like Kaduk again, for example, makes it like an 8 for 5, which is not bad, but you need another 2 damaged units. So the resetting the order is not that great. I think the ones that sort of came to mind for me were onto a Masquerade Ball, for example. It gives you the ability to play another Fangs, so has the potential to be playing as like an 8 for 5 with poison, which is really good. With Siege, it can allow you to do another mobilization, and a bombardment, and bombardment's pretty good because Siege is spawning your siege engines. You have the resupply on blisters, so re-trigger. So being able to use multiple bombardments is kind of good. But kind of beyond that, there was nothing else that really came to mind. The other one was like Passiflora. Passiflora is like not bad because a second slash Electros isn't terrible, but as I say, it feels too gimmicky. I think it's like between these two, but I'll be nice and say it's a C. In that, like, you'd maybe run one of these. Maybe I can't judge for myself until I play it and kind of figure out the value exactly of it. So yeah, I think it's playable. But yeah, I would say this is the list of things I think. I think as you'll kind of know from any video like this, I'm almost certainly wrong about every single one of these cards. Scapegoat is maybe an auto include, and C is absolutely terrible and never sees play. Who knows? But I think if I'm in a position where I can sort of craft these day one, just with the amount of scraps. But if I didn't, this would be the sort of my priority in effect. And yeah, I will have a link to this like tier list in the description if you want to give it a go yourself, and point out all the places that I'm wrong. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next video where we'll have a 6 factions, 6 decks, and information about the giveaways and things like that. So drop by that one, and I'll catch you later.